There is a menace, a foreign menace that lurks at the heart of Scotland's forests. And it's a menace that people have finally decided to do something about. And I'm currently on a bikepacking trip around Galloway Forest Park. And Galloway is the largest forest park anywhere in Scotland, anywhere on the UK. And yesterday I was talking about how the attempts to get this designated a national park has caused absolute chaos here. Chaos among the locals, so might be worth going and watching that video first. But in this video I'm discussing a separate issue, and this is an issue that has been going on for centuries. But to start with, we're going to have to go even further back than that. "5,000 years ago, Scotland would have both looked very similar to this, but also completely different. I mean, the hills and all would have been here, but there would have been trees everywhere. Because if you look around now, it's naked. There's hardly any trees here. And there would have been trees of all kinds of sorts. So we would have all kind of broadleaf trees like oaks, and then you would have had native evergreens like Scots pines. And there was even rainforest in Scotland. That's something that blew my mind. Temperate rainforest. It's damp, it's cold. You've got ancient trees with plants growing on them. There's all kinds of insects and fungi and all kinds of wildlife growing in them. But then the trees began to disappear because early agriculture by humans, well, that takes up a lot of space. You need land to grow plants, you need land to build pastures and raise animals. So one by one the trees began to get cut down, either for the land to be used for humans or for the wood to be used for fuel or for construction. So by the time the Romans invaded Scotland in AD 82, over half the forests had been cut down and were beginning to be replaced by wet, marshy, boggy peatlands. Agriculture continued to take its toll on the trees, as did industry, shipbuilding, construction, and then just the fires and the furnaces that fueled the advancement of human civilization. Wood was a material and a fuel that brought us into the modern age. It's pretty amazing. Nearly 2,000 years later, in 1900, only 5% of the trees remained. And with the loss of the trees came the loss of the animals that relied on them. Colin.
No.
Did you know that giant elk, brown bears, wolves, northern lynx, wild ox, reindeer, beavers and wild boar all used to live in Scotland?
I did.
And they're now all extinct.
They're now all extinct.
Very sad. Today, tree cover in Scotland is back up to 18%, which might sound quite good by comparison, but those green treetops that look beautiful from the top, well, underneath they're hiding a dark secret. Dun dun dun! This is the wood of Cree. It's just north of Newton Stewart, and this place is the remnant of a 5,000-year-old ancient woodland. It's absolutely beautiful. Woods like this would have covered a lot of southern Scotland. The trees here, I think, are Cecil oak, a lot of them. Now there's not very many really mature trees here because 200 years ago this place was completely clear felled, but they never removed the soil or the stumps, so these trees have all grown up from the remnants of those ancient trees, which is why it still retains its ancient status. And yeah, there's just something kind of special about this place. The ground is covered in all kinds of plants. I can hear birds singing, and it's a place that is known for having a huge variety of plants and animals and birds. And this used to be everywhere. This kind of green, this kind of life, this kind of variety. But today, woodlands like this only make up 4% of Scotland's tree cover. The majority of Scotland's tree cover doesn't look like this underneath. It looks like this. And this place is a desert. If you just listen for a second, it's very little sound. I'm here just after sunrise. This place, if it was a natural native woodland, would be absolutely alive. My voice would be drowned out right now by birdsong. There's nothing really grows on the ground here. It's so dark, so little light gets in. You maybe get some moss and fungus and that's it. In fact, the light is so low in here that the lower limbs of the trees just die, rot and crumble and fall apart. There's no life in the trees even until about 10 meters from the top of the canopy. This place is unnatural. It chokes out all the native and natural plants as well, because what you'll often see in places like this is the dead saplings of native plants that the seeds have come in, they've tried to grow, and they've been choked out by the misery that is this place. But the thing is, this is an entirely necessary place that we can't live without, because this is a plantation. This is not natural. It's a plantation. You notice all the trees are planted in neat rows. It's a Sitka spruce plantation, and that is what the majority of Scotland's forests for the last 200 years have been made up of. So why do we need it? Why is it, no matter where you go outside, there's always an abandoned can of Stella? Stella! No. Oh. Right, here's a fact that might horrify you. The UK is the third largest importer of timber in the world. Think about that. Think about all of the size of the UK compared to all the countries around the world. UK imports 81% of all timber is imported, and UK spends £8.5 billion a year importing timber, and that timber is used for loads of stuff that we use every single day. It's used for paper, it's used for pallets, it's used for packaging, and a lot of it is used for construction. The roof beams in most of your houses are probably made from timber, so we import a lot of it. But it's also important that we're able to produce our own, and that is why you have the plantations like this, because we need this wood, we use this wood, and Sitka spruce is chosen because it is an incredibly fast growing tree. It grows at up to 1.5 meters per year, meaning that a plantation like this is ready to be harvested after just 40 to 50 years. If you were using native species, say something like oak, it could take 100 years or more to get to that same point. So it is a great tree. It comes from North America, where they're native to more elevated, damp, cold conditions, which makes them perfect for Scotland. There are some advantages to Sitka spruce. One of them is that it's actually quite a good carbon store. They absorb a lot of carbon, and then when you chop them down and you build them into things that people keep in their houses, you know, your roof beams, that carbon is stored sort of permanently, or at least as long as the building lasts. So it's not that it's a bad tree, or I've got anything against it, or that I've actually got anything against plantations, because we need them. The problem is, though, that this is the majority of the forest cover, and that really needs to change.
By the way, if you've been enjoying the drone footage that I've been using in this video, and you're thinking about getting a drone for your own adventures, I've got one little option here for you to check out.
Okay, this is the tiny Hover Air X1, a tiny foldable, pocketable drone, which is brilliant for getting quick shots of yourself for social media. And it's really, really good at tracking you. It uses AI algorithms and image processing to spot where you are in the image, and it just follows you. It's so good, in fact, that it doesn't have a controller. You literally switch it on, select from one of the preset modes, it flies, you hold your hand out, and it automatically lands without you having to do, well, pretty much anything. This is tiny. It'll go in my bag on the top of my bike there. It'll even fit into my pocket on my shorts. Now, it doesn't shoot super high quality video, so if you're really into your filmmaking, this might not be the drone for you. But if you just want quick and easy shots, well, why not take a little bit of a look at the Hover Air X1. And thanks very much to Hover Air for sponsoring this video. Something else that gets me is that nearly all of the forest plantations that you see in Scotland, think about them, if you've ever driven through Scotland, they're everywhere, think about them. 200 years ago, none of them existed. Because 200 years ago, we were down to that 5% tree cover. So imagine what the landscape of Scotland would have looked like 200 years ago. You kind of assume going that far back, it would be a lot wilder, but actually it would have looked a lot tamer, flattened. There were no trees because these plantations didn't start appearing until around the 1830s. So it was actually much worse for a long time. You could make a strong argument to say that a plantation is a sick forest. And I mean that literally. Literally, the conditions that these trees are forced to grow up in actually makes them ill. And as a child, I remember going to the forest near me, which I didn't realize at the time it was a plantation, but I loved it when you went into the trees. You would find these standing trees that were dead, and if you kicked them, they would just explode. I loved knocking them over. Did anyone else do that? But the fact is that they probably shouldn't really be there, especially, look how thick that is. That's quite a thick trunk, and this is standing dead wood. And what happens here is, if you look at this, you can see it's thinner than a lot of the other trees around here. This has got crowded out for light and has been killed. So sitka even kill their own kind in the quest for sunlight. And that's not the only thing. If we look just over here, again, this is something you will see a lot in the plantations. Because the trees are planted so close together, they're forced to grow tall, fast, to compete for sunlight, and that makes them vulnerable to windy conditions, so they can get knocked over quite easily. You'll see this most if you ever go to a forest plantation after some other trees have been cut down, particularly the ones around the edges. Once you cut those down, the ones in the middle have got very weak roots, and you'll find that the next storm that blows in will knock down huge numbers of trees. I mean, I can see more away up there, and that's because, again, the trees aren't able to grow in a healthy way. They've been deformed into these tall, stringy, weak, feeble things, when these are actually quite magnificent trees that have a lot more potential than that. Well, thankfully the future doesn't look quite as gloomy as the present, because there are now huge efforts underway to try and find that balance between restoring the natural woodlands and also supplying the timber needs of the country. And this includes things like, I have a list here, restoring thousands and thousands of hectares of Caledonian pine woods, Atlantic woodland, which is Scotland's temperate rainforest that I mentioned earlier. Forest planners are creating corridors of natural woodland so they can connect up all these pockets of woodland that have remained, and that will create this one big network of natural woodland, which is really, really important for allowing animal species to move and thrive among a much wider space than they're currently confined to. They're also leaving 6% of the government's woodlands after they get harvested for timber. They're not replanting them, they're just leaving them to just naturally regenerate, and whatever grows there. They'll be very much just replanted by whatever.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt myself there because I could continue going on talking about all these amazing plans, all these things that people say are going to happen. But until they actually happen, it's just talk. I mean, there is some good stuff is happening right now, but all the future stuff, well, we don't really know. That may or may not happening. Some of it might just be greenwashing. After all, it's very, very, very easy to make plans and say you're planning to do things. It's very difficult to actually carry those plans out, but I'm at least hopeful that it does seem like the will is there to change things and change things for the better.
So there is a very good chance that in another 200 years from now, Scotland will once again look very different, but this time a better reflection of its former glory. And that's where I'm going to stop talking about trees and get back to finishing this bikepacking trip. By the way, if you haven't watched the previous video where I talk about the national park, these two videos are kind of meshed together, so you can go back and watch it. This might be a good point to mention if you are enjoying this video and you want to find out more about what I'm doing, you can subscribe to the channel. I also have a Patreon where for free you can sign up and you get an email newsletter. They'll just keep you updated with things that I'm doing, or if you want to, you can even sign up as a paid member to support the channel and get a few other benefits as well. but we've got about 30 miles to do to get us back to the ferry to head back over to Northern Ireland. Right. Let's go catch a ferry. Whoa! I nearly hit that tree.
Dancing through the last days of September. Dancing through the last days of September.
Hi, sheep. What's up?